From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. I'm Amelia Francis Finch, and with your news updates to 12 o'clock. Vancouver Police Department has tweeted about the arrest of a 37-year-old woman who was blocking traffic on the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge this morning. She was taken to jail after refusing to leave the roadway. The protest that was held at 7:30 a.m. this morning on the busy commuter bridge was in support of Saving the Old Growth. Save the Old Growth is the same group behind a series of traffic disruptions and demonstrations that have been carried out around BC over the past few months. A 68-year-old Nanaimo man who began a hunger strike 25 days ago for the Old Growth protests says he has spent 3 hours in hospital yesterday. However, he will continue to take action against the government this way. Howard Breen says both his doctor and his daughter, who was a cardiac nurse, have advised him to get medical treatment because he could suffer from kidney or heart problems. Breen says even though he's now drinking liquids again, he won't be eating anything until the end of the month to continue his protest for climate action. Forestry Minister Katrine Conroy says she is concerned about the health of Breen, as well as another man who hasn't eaten for 32 days. Conroy says she has told both of them over the phone last week that the province is working to preserve more old-growth forests. Now we're going to go over live to Maham, who is in Vancouver, to talk about the avian flu. Maham, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so BC poultry farms are taking safety measures following the outbreak of the avian flu in Canada.
Yeah, Maham, are you there? Sorry.
Yeah. Do you have the questions?
Sorry, I'm not. I don't actually have any.
Okay.
What case was it that was brought to our attention?
So it's the avian flu. All poultry farmers in British Columbia are at their highest level of biosecurity right now due to the flu. Some measures involve limitations on who can enter the farm, sanitization of the trucks and seeds being brought in, regular shoe changing before stepping foot into the farm, and hand washing.
Oh, wow. Okay, and what's our next steps?
Well, the chief veterinary officer has issued an order to keep all birds inside. Production has not been affected by the flu, and the birds are still healthy on the farms. There has been a potential case that is currently being investigated in Cowichan Valley by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, but as for now, there's just safety measures being followed. Okay.
Thank you, Maham.
Yeah, thank you, Millie.
And so the Vancouver Fire Department have confirmed two people were killed in the Gastown fire that took place at the Winters Hotel. After the managers of the low-income housing stated that everyone has survived the blaze, it came as quite a shock to the families of the victims.
And I knew exactly the fire he was talking about because I knew my auntie is in the downtown east side.
Misty Fredericks says that her aunt was a dedicated mother who helped others on the downtown east side. Marianne Garlow was just 62 years old. The fire wiped out the entire building on the corner of Abbott and Water Street on April 11th. Montreal billionaire Mark Pathy is back on Earth with a very expensive astronaut escort after his pricey trip to the International Space Station. SpaceX flew him, along with two other billionaires, back today, which wrapped up their 17-day chartered flight. This marks the first time NASA has opened its space hatches to tourists. The trip cost a total of $55 million each. Their stay was supposed to last just a week, but due to the weather, they were held up almost twice as long as intended. A large group of motorcyclists is on its way to Ottawa this weekend, calling themselves the Rolling Thunder Convoy. However, the Ottawa Police Department says that protesters will need to attend by foot this time. The police department says they are bringing in reinforcements to ensure there will no longer be another situation like the trucker convoy created. The Freedom Trucker Convoy shut down the city of Ottawa for 3 weeks last month, and the cost to taxpayers was millions with their disruptions at the capital city. Ottawa Interim Chief Steve Bell says our communities are scarred by what happened in February. They were deeply hurt and deeply affected by that. The police department says residents of Ottawa should be prepared for more traffic delays. Defence Minister Anita Anand will release a report today that will hold the Canadian military accountable for not doing enough to tackle racism and discrimination within the military. This report is the result of a year-long review by a panel of retired Canadian Armed Forces. The panel was created to address the issues over the past 2 decades. And the investigation was launched after members of the Canadian military reported acts that have happened by right-wing extremists and white supremacy groups. Chief of the Defense Staff General Wayne Eyre says the military is dealing with the same issues that are affecting all of society.
The real challenge we face with many of these organizations is they tend to morph. Once they're illuminated, once the spotlight goes on them, they change their names, they change their symbols, symbology. So the challenge is staying abreast of these changes.
The Ukrainian foreign minister says in order to win the war in Russia, Ukraine needs more help from the West.
As long as Russian soldier puts a foot on Ukrainian soil, nothing is enough. And I want to be straight on it. We appreciate everything that has been done, including by the United States. We understand that for some, what has been done is already a revolution. But this is not enough as long as the war continues.
This comes after Ukraine did not reach an agreement with Russia today on evacuating civilians from a steel plant in the southern city of Mariupol. Russia said earlier that it would open a humanitarian corridor for civilians to leave the huge steel plant where they are being held up with Ukrainian fighters and are under Russian fire. Elon Musk says that he has lined up $46 billion in financing to buy Twitter. Reporters say Musk and Twitter are nearing a deal that would allow the world's richest man to take over the social media platform. According to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, both sides were involved in thorough negotiations during the weekend to discuss the details of a possible takeover. This includes a timeline and outlined the costs of breakup fees should the deal fall apart. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeted his best wishes to the new president of France, writing that he looks forward to continuing their work together with issues including defending democracy, fighting climate change, and economic growth for the middle class. The U.S. President, Joe Biden, is sending his congratulations to President Emmanuel Macron following his second-term victory.
I feel good about the French election, number one. Number two, I tried to talk to him last night. We spoke with the staff, but he was at the Eiffel Tower having a good time. So I'm going to be talking to him today.
And the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, calls Macron's triumph a great expression of liberal democracy. And for today's weather, we are looking at a mix of sun and clouds for this afternoon, winds of 20 kilometers per hour with a high of 12 degrees. That's all for this morning. I'm Amelia Francis Fincham with 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. It's just about 10 afternoon at the BCIT Broadcast Center. I'm Ryan Bailey with your sports headlines. Big news from the Raptors this morning is they'll be shorthanded for Game 5 with point guard Fred VanVleet sidelined. The confirmation came early this morning after VanVleet was listed as questionable following Game 4. VanVleet is reportedly suffering from a hip injury. This could be costly to the Raptors as they are already down 3-1 in their series against the Philadelphia 76ers. Sixers All-Star and MVP candidate Joel Embiid plans on playing through the pain despite suffering a sprained thumb. Tonight at 4 o'clock Vancouver time, the Jays will be hosting American League East rivals, the Boston Red Sox. Having been walked off in Houston yesterday, the Jays come home from a 6-game road trip to face off against the Sox, who they played against at Fenway last week. Jose Barrios will take the mound for the Jays, coming off a strong outing last week against Boston. In that game, Barrios gave up just 1 run over 6 innings of work. Following the passing of legendary hockey player Guy Lafleur last Friday, the Montreal Canadiens paid tribute to the Hall of Famer before their game on Sunday. A tribute video was played in the Bell Centre and past teammates came to honor him.
You don't forget a guy like Guy. I mean, I'm talking about the man. I know the guy in hockey. Talking about the man. The man is, like I said, he's so popular, but he deserves it.
Lafleur won 5 Stanley Cups for the Canadiens in the 1970s and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1988. The NBA has dished out 2 significant fines against the 76ers center Joel Embiid and head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies Taylor Jenkins, both for $15,000 for criticizing the officiating. Jenkins made his feelings well known at the post-game press conference following Game 4.
I mean, we got to play better, but in my opinion, one of the most poorly officiated games I've ever seen in my NBA career.
Embiid's fine comes as a result of their Game 4 loss to Toronto, where he mockingly applauded the refs at the end of the game. 3 NBA playoff games going on tonight. First up will be the Boston Celtics looking to sweep Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets tonight. That game starts at 4 p.m. Pacific. As mentioned earlier, the Raptors and Sixers square off at 5 p.m., and the Jazz and Mavericks will break their series tie at 6:30. In Germany, the U18 Men's Hockey Championship saw Canada take its first win against the hosting Germans 8-3. North Vancouver-born Connor Bedard netted himself a hat-trick in the contest. The 16-year-old hockey prodigy broke 2 team records yesterday, passing Matthew Barzal for all-time leading scorer at this tournament and Shane Wright as Canada's top goal scorer. After losing to the Americans 8-3 on Saturday, the Canadians flipped the script, scoring 4 goals in just the second period yesterday. The Canadians will play the Czech Republic Tuesday at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time, so set your alarms if you want to catch that one. Canadian tennis player Felix Auger-Aliassime is in Portugal for the Estoril Open, which starts today. Coming into the tournament as the number 1 seed means he will have a bye for the first round, and we'll wait to see who his opponent is on Wednesday. The Montreal native comes into this week as the number 10 ranked player in the world, 1 place drop from where he was last week. And in Geneva, Switzerland, Canada's Jocelyn Peterman and Brett Gallant lost to Scotland 8-4 on Monday in a matchup of 2 top teams in the World Mixed Doubles Curling Championship. Scotland maintained its perfect record at 4-0, while Canada slides to 3rd place in their group, tied with Hungary at 3-1. The Canadians are scheduled to play Hungary and the Czech Republic this week ahead of the championship rounds this weekend. A Nevada judge has postponed a hearing in a felony assault case involving 2 NFL players. New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara and Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Chris Lamons are 2 of 4 defendants accused of severely beating a man in a Las Vegas nightclub on the weekend of the Pro Bowl. Police say CCTV footage shows the attack happening on an elevator at Dry's nightclub in Las Vegas. The 4 men are free on bond now, and the hearing is scheduled for August 1st. Russia has lost its privilege of hosting an event on figure skating's Grand Prix circuit next season as a result of their invasion of Ukraine. According to the International Skating Union, they are looking for a new host city for the November event. This is another international sporting event that has isolated Russia since their invasion in February. That will be all for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Ryan Bailey. and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Hey there, welcome to For the Record. I'm your host, Sadie Chung. You're listening to 1680 The Crow. Charmaine Brett Mills joins us today. Charmaine brings more than 20 years of experience in international humanitarian relief. She's the executive director of Veterinarians Without Borders Canada, which has just recently deployed Canadian vets to the Polish-Ukraine border to support the provision of animal health care to pets fleeing war action with their owners. Thanks for joining us today, Charmaine.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling me about what sparked the initiative in deploying vets to the Polish-Ukraine border?
Veterinarians Without Borders Canada is a member of VSF International, which is a network of 13 organizations that all have very similar mandate to serve animal welfare and animal health organizations internationally. Vets Without Borders Canada is a very unique organization because we not only work internationally, but we also have the opportunity to work in our own backyard in Northern Canada, and we've been doing so since 2019. We offer remote animal health clinics to communities who have requested it in the north. Internationally, we are working in South Sudan, Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, and in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And our programming there has really been backboned on a volunteer sending type model, where we've been offering technical animal health experts to our local partners and really helping them build their capacity. Our mission embodies One Health and localization. So really working through local partners to ensure we have a sustainable approach. In South Sudan, we've had a little bit more of an emergency type lens to our work as it's an ongoing emergency setting, which has really helped us to be able to launch our programs in Ukraine for this current response efforts.
So what exactly do your response efforts consist of?
So as soon as the war began, we started to look at how we can support the situation on the ground, and really piggybacking on our expertise in localization, we began to search and find animal health organizations within the Ukraine and identify ones that were needing support and ones that were really becoming the backbone of the communities. I've been very impressed by the organization of the Ukrainian population and how they've quickly come to the table to support the animal health needs. We've been able to partner with some really key groups in country. One organization that I spoke with yesterday has had over 700 requests to support animal health centers, shelters, communities with their growing needs as the war continues. So our response is really looking at supporting these organizations so they can deliver food and medicine to the organizations, the shelters in need, as well as rebuilding. There's a little bit of rebuilding that they can do right now that is imperative for the animal health and safety. A lot of the shelters have been hit, so really having that core infrastructure developed so that they can continue operations. One thing that's really just really hits home as something is that as the communities are fleeing, the one thing that is staying is the shelters because they can't flee with the animals. I was speaking to a lady who runs a shelter just outside of Kyiv, and she has now 700 animals, and she's taking care of the animals on the streets, and there's nobody around but her and her father, and they are doing everything they can to keep the animals alive and themselves, and it's heartbreaking.
Why do you think animals have become such a central focus for many in this war?
Yeah. Having worked in international humanitarian response for my whole career, I find it fascinating. I've responded in Congo, in South Sudan, in Haiti. This situation is completely different. If you were in Congo supporting in a conflict situation and you ask people what they would need, they'd say food, water, shelter, protection. If you ask people in the Ukraine what they need, they say food, water, shelter, protection, and my dog. I need safety for my dog. That human-animal bond is just something that is rising to the top in this conflict, and it is really bringing animals front and center.
Totally. As a dog owner myself, I could not imagine leaving my pet behind. What are you seeing from your partners in Ukraine?
So the local partners in Ukraine are really, they're exceptional at organizing right now. There's a group of 13 organizations that have come together, and they've created this really amazing platform and database where they're able to track real-time needs of the shelters within the whole country and then organize the logistics to get them supplies. Our one partner yesterday almost delivered supplies to 6,000 animals in Ukraine. So just really, it's an amazing logistical setup that they have. And they're getting all of the supplies through the border in Poland and then bringing it up in a warehouse in Lviv and then distributing throughout the country.
So that's in Ukraine. Now, what are you seeing on the border in Poland?
So we have deployed 2 Canadian veterinarians to assess the situation in Poland and try to identify any gaps. We've been to numerous refugee camps. We even set up a little animal health center in one. And it is astonishing how well the Polish government is doing. They have been so organized and they have really been able to do an exceptional job as animals come in. They're vaccinating, microchipping, and sending everybody on their way. So it's really a transitional setting. We're still assessing in the Medyka border area right now, and we haven't come clear what the needs are there. But what we've seen throughout a lot of the parts of Poland is that the government is doing an amazing job.
So you mentioned you've deployed 2 vets. I understand they are Rob and Elaine Clemenson. Can you tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, so Rob and Elaine they're amazing. They have done clinics with us in Northern Canada for a long time. They're a great team. They can work in a really remote rural setting and kind of hit the ground running. And they phoned me up and said they wanted to go and do this right after we said that we wanted to send somebody. So they really just dropped everything and were ready to hit the ground running. They haven't been practicing veterinary medicine in Poland. That wasn't the mission that they were set out to do. They're really just going and assessing and networking and finding out where are the gaps. And they're doing an exceptional job at doing that.
Were you surprised at all at how quickly they stood up to help? How did that make you feel?
So I was surprised how quickly they stood up, but what was more surprising is that I've had over 200 other veterinarians say that they will drop everything right now and leave. I've had veterinarians, the majority from Canada, but also from the States and from Europe. It's so heartwarming to see how the animal health sector has really come together in this time.
So the vets that are willing and eager to help as well, do you plan on deploying them too?
So right now we're assessing the need, and within the Polish sphere, we are not seeing a need for additional international veterinarians to go in. We're still looking to see if there's needs for us to be helping out in the Medyka border. This is a very quickly evolving situation. So it's hard to say what our international volunteer needs will be throughout the whole response. But as of right now, we're holding off on putting anybody else on the ground.
And going back to Rob and Elaine, have you heard back from them since? How's it going?
Yeah, I speak to them every half an hour, pretty much, I think. Yeah, they're doing great. They've really become a part of the community. They have a driver that they're using. They have a kind of a house that they're staying at, and the owner's really been helping them find their way. They've been going to the train stations, to the refugee camps, talking to the population. They've been doing a great job.
Good to hear. What kind of safety protocols do you have in place? Was there any fear of what things were going to be like over there?
Yeah, for sure. So in Helm, where they are right now, at the camp where they're staying just beside, there's 130 Polish military. So they have very up-to-date security information. We're also working with an organization called Safer Access, and they're based in Lviv. They're Canadian. And they are security consultants. So they're helping us to understand the situation on the border and the overall context of the war, as well as hopefully being able to support our local partners within the country.
So you recently launched an emergency fundraising campaign. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so our fundraising campaign is really about supporting the partners on the ground and our response efforts as things unfold with the war. And we've been utilizing those great dollars to support the partners directly in Ukraine to help the animal situation. So really providing food and medicine, as well as continue their operations as much as possible. And the funds that we have received and been able to deploy has been so well received by the partners. One partner, we sent just a small amount of money, $4,000. They went out within an hour and bought animal food and medicine and then emailed me the receipts for all of their pets. It's just amazing.
There's a lot of dog owners and pet owners here in Canada and BC as well. Do you find that because of that human-animal bond connection you mentioned, you are seeing more people who can relate and are more willing to support?
Absolutely. Putting yourself in the situation of somebody who's trying to flee with their dog. I know myself, I couldn't imagine my cat's right beside me, having to put her in my coat and try to flee with my children. And it just makes you want to do anything you can to help those people because they're in such an awful situation.
So where do you go from here? You mentioned things are constantly changing. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so I think that nobody can predict how the war is going to go from here. What parts of the country will be able to continue aid in, how many people will be fleeing, and how that will change at the border. So I think being able to understand how the network of logistics for supporting the shelters in country rolls out, and having that move in a sustainable way, as well as having a presence so that we can identify as needs change at the border areas and support them. There's been a lot of people who have fled, but there are a lot of people left in Ukraine, and making sure that we support them as they move through this awful situation is key.
And what has been the state of these pets? I could imagine they're quite frightened.
Yeah, so what they're seeing at the Polish border, it changes through the different entry posts, right? In Helm, the animals that have come through that they've seen they've been frightened, and like they haven't been to the bathroom in a long time. They're not seeing a lot of wounded animals. It's more animals that have just really been impacted by the trauma. Where they are now at the border crossing, I've heard that there's up to 30% animals coming through with the people. So it'll be interesting to see what they say as far as the needs are there and the animals that are impacted, if they're injured or what the situation is.
Okay, so there are no implications about bringing pets across the border?
That's correct. Right now, pets are allowed to come across the border and transition from Poland as long as they're microchipped and vaccinated, and the Polish government is doing both.
Are there any other ways your organization might help other than with domestic pets?
I think one thing that I'm really trying to understand and identify moving forward is not just the domestic animals, but the farm animals. And I think that's something that hasn't really been touched upon in the response efforts. And I've been trying to reach out to our partners to get a better understanding of what has happened to all the farm animals and how are they doing now? Have they just been released? Are the farmers still there? It's much more difficult to connect with individuals in Ukraine versus the organizations. And it's those individual farmers that we really need to understand the status of and how they are surviving in the land.
And if that is the case, that these Ukrainian farmers do need help for their animals, where would you go from there?
Yeah, so that's a very similar type response program to what we have had in other countries. You're really looking at a food security livestock type programming, which we can definitely do and have done a lot in the past. The thing that is the caveat is the conflict and where it's moving. So you want to make sure that you are being as safe as possible, right? And understanding where the security issues are.
We don't have much time left, Charmaine. Is there anything else you'd like to add on behalf of Veterinarians Without Borders?
So I think from VWB's side, we just really want to say thank you to all of our supporters and to all of the people who have come to the table. There's been people saying they want to volunteer. There's been organizations sending medical supplies, medicine. There's been people who are saying they'll buy food, they'll send their points. It's just been amazing to see how many people want to help out this dire situation. And it really, in a time when things seem so awful, brings that beacon of light to show that humanity is really stepping up.
It certainly does. Well, thank you to my guest, Charmaine Brett-Mills from Veterinarians Without Borders. That's all the time we have today on For the Record. I'm Sadie Chung. You're listening to 1680 The Crow. Take care and best of luck.
Justin sits at his desk. The sun shines through his brown curtains, reflecting off the green walls. A row of Star Wars Lego figures are waiting to cheer him on. His two monitors are in sync with each other. He hopes this will be the winning game.
Honestly, when I first got my PS4, which I saved up with my own money when I was 12 or 13, it's the first game I got because I played the beta first and I was like, this reminds me of Halo, because it was from the same publisher, Bungie. And I played a lot of Halo when I was younger, and honestly I was hooked right away. Basic background is it's a video game where you are the hero of the story, and your solar system, let's say, because it's a space fantasy, is overrun by a bunch of different types of aliens. And when the story first started, it was very much the world is black and white. Like, you are the good guys, they are the bad guys.
The campaign begins.
It's something a lot of people who spend time playing games at any point can understand, is there's some days where you're on the ball, you've got it, and others that you are just completely sucking, whether it's from factors in the game or factors outside. Like, if you're in a bad mood, you're likely going to be not playing very well, and that can influence everything. Oh, fucking Velociraptor, go! The main challenge would be time, I would argue, because as life continues on, you get different priorities, and you have less time to be doing the things that you used to spend an immense amount of time on. So I probably took close to 6 to 8 months away from the game because I was so focused on my university studies, on working, on general life rough times. Like, it was an escape from challenges that were occurring in life, and it was a world that I was able to jump into with my best friend and still do from time to time. And it becomes just a place where we can just laugh, just shoot aliens, enjoy time, sometimes going all night, and it's something that is unique to every individual who plays video games. They all have their one game that is their escape, and will pretty much always be their go-to, whether it's through the ups and downs, whatever happens. It will always have a strong memory for them, and Destiny is mine.
I think everyone should try to understand their world, really see their world, not just what their screens decide they should look at, and give that world a little more time. Like, I think we're all running out of time, and it's really sad that it's this way.
Do you ever wish you could stop time and recall every single detail? The smell of the air, the conversations bubbling around you, the distinct face of the person sitting right in front of you? Well, this artist has found the key to doing that, and he urges everyone to try it. I'm Shivani Joshi, and I'm with Julie Madsen. We're talking to engineer-turned-artist Nishant Jain. He refers to himself as a sneaky artist as he's traveled across the world with trusty moleskin and pen in hand, quickly and discreetly capturing the mundanities of the world and giving them a story. Maybe he's even drawn you.
Can slow down your sense of time if you really spend your time observing things. So I think I've made it my job now to slow down time. I do it every day. Like, I can show you 1 hour in which you will remember every single minute of that hour if you spend it drawing. I can look at a drawing from 2019, and as soon as I look at it, I'm immediately reminded. All of the memories come, all the senses come flooding back. Like, I remember where I was sitting. I remember if I was listening to music or if there were people talking behind me. The temperature, the wind, who I was with, all of those memories are locked in those pages. And in a sense, those are very ordinary days, and those are very ordinary places and very ordinary surroundings. But I've made memories out of them, and they're all registered now. They're not lost. And I feel like this is a good way to expand time.
By drawing out what's right in front of him, Nishant feels that that's the best way for him to fully immerse himself into the world and to connect to the greater community.
I really want to be there. I don't want to be disconnected in any sense of the word. I want to be there physically, and I want to absorb all the things happening around me. So if I'm drawing right here where we're sitting right now, the sounds of the kids behind us are important. Just as important as it is for me to feel the weather and the temperature and the wind and the sun. All of it plays into what I do, and it helps me make a better drawing if I'm completely engaged and completely present.
As I flipped through Nishant's sketchbook, I didn't just see drawings. I saw stories. His friends in India getting married, his family doing the crossword together, a woman staring out the window of a coffee shop, pedestrians on the street. As I pointed to the details that interested me most, he was able to tell me what was happening in each of those moments.
Oh, I want to tell stories to the most number of people that I can. I think that's my most primal impulse, and I think that's what I do. Every week, I share my drawings with people who read my newsletter, and I tell them what I saw, and I share my world with them. I share my stories with them, and I help them to try to find stories in their own world. And I think that's a very fulfilling thing for me. I want to keep doing it.
Although Nishant has built a wholesome community for himself through his art, both online and offline, he's definitely grappled with the challenge of moving around the world and rebuilding a network, especially in a small town in the American Midwest.
Easy to be in a big city when you're a foreigner, but soon after Chicago, we moved to a small town in Wisconsin. And there it was like I was standing out very clearly, and things seemed a lot more alien than they did in a big metropolitan city. So art at that time, sneaky art, wandering around a city, giving myself the right to sit down somewhere and just watch people do things, that felt important. It was the only way that I could comfortably hang around in places where I felt like an outsider and spend some time just observing life. And this, although it was inadvertent, this led to a sense of community with the places I was living at. And instead of always seeing them as people different from me, by the act of really observing them, and drawing does this, you spend a half hour or 1 hour looking at something very ordinary and you're not moving. And that time that you spend, the attention that you give, it helps you to find similarities and not just differences.
After talking to the sneaky artist, I realized how the moments I remember the best are the moments I took a minute to allow myself to be in awe of the world. Sometimes we just need to slow down and find art in the fleeting and mundane.
From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hello, I'm Riley Lyons, and this is your news and sports update for 1 o'clock. Today, Twitter has agreed to sell itself to Elon Musk for $54.20 per share, equaling a purchase of $44 billion. Twitter released a press release announcing that the company will be sold entirely to Elon Musk, who's planning on turning it into a private company. Twitter shareholders, including CIBC and RBC, will receive their share value in cash for each of their shares after the company's transaction closes. Elon Musk says he wants to make Twitter better than ever before by unlocking its true potential as a free speech platform. The sale value was based off of Twitter's stock as of April 1st, the last day that the company was open for trading, before Elon Musk disclosed his 9% take in the company. The 68-year-old hunger strike protester fighting to save old-growth forests was hospitalized briefly after fasting for 25 days. Howard Breen says doctors and his family have advised him to be checked into a hospital as he could suffer heart and kidney problems. Breen says he will continue to fast but will begin drinking liquids as to avoid dehydration. Forestry Minister Katrine Conroy says she is concerned about the health of Breen as well as other hunger strike protesters who hasn't eaten in 32 days. Conroy says she told them both over the phone last week that the province is working to preserve more old-growth forests. The city of Surrey is hosting a free Earth Day event this weekend to educate residents on how they can become more environmentally friendly. With more on the story, here's Evan Tate.
Surrey's Party for the Planet will feature live performances from local musicians, educational workshops, and more environmental activities. The event is free to attend from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Surrey Civic Plaza, although Surrey Parks will be hosting a plant sale, as well as an abundance of Vancouver's most beloved food trucks being there. This is Surrey's 11th annual Earth Day event, and the first one to be back in person since the start of the pandemic in 2020. Surrey is utilizing the physical presence by setting up a used clothing swap, where residents can trade in unwanted or old clothing with another person, or they can bring in ripped and damaged clothing for repair. The whole event is part of Surrey's grand plan to be Canada's first zero-waste community. Evan Tate, 1680, The Crow.
Manitoba schools have been cancelled today as weather conditions remain severe. Following heavy snowfall and flooding, severe weather remain in effect. Environment Canada says that the significant rainfall could reach 30 to 60 millimeters in total for southern Manitoba. The flooding also led to a collapsed roadway on Route 90 between Dublin Avenue and Notre Dame Avenue. The Liberal government is launching an independent public inquiry to investigate the Emergency Act that was used for the anti-government lockdowns that occurred last winter in Ottawa. The Freedom Convoys were broken apart using the Emergencies Act within Ottawa and at multiple border crossings. The act was applied for just 10 days. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicio says the government will have access to all the documents and information needed.
Only after very careful consideration, on the advice of professional, nonpartisan branches of law enforcement, that we invoked the Emergencies Act. It was a necessary decision. It was a responsible decision. It was the right thing to do.
And the Montreal Canadiens paid tribute to the Hall of Famer Guy Lafleur before their game on Sunday. Guy Lafleur, an NHL legend and specifically a Montreal Canadiens legend, died last Friday. A tribute video towards him was played in the Bell Centre, and past teammates had came to honor him.
You don't forget a guy like Guy. I mean, I'm talking about the man. I know the guy in hockey. Talking about the man. The man is, like I said, he's so popular, but he deserves it.
Lafleur won 5 Stanley Cups for the Canadiens in the 1970s and was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1988. As well in hockey, hockey legend Alex Ovechkin is listed as day-to-day after leaving last night's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ovechkin had a missed breakaway attempt and ended up tripping over a Toronto Maple Leaf stick. He ended up going hard into the boards, landing on his shoulder. He's officially listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury and hopes to be back in time for playoffs. At the World U18 Hockey Championship in Germany, Canada defeated Germany 8-3 with 16-year-old hockey prodigy Connor Bedard scoring a hat trick. I'm Riley Lyons.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.